visitors and guests. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 35th meeting of a Rotary year and our 5,118th club meeting in our 105-year history. It's great to see you all here today, including those attending online. We have a very special meeting agenda planned today, our 2026 members lunch, with our guest speakers drawn from diverse membership. Would you please join me in welcoming financial expert and Swinburne University Associate Professor Dr. Dimitrios Salapakis. Dimitrios will speak on his recent visits to Davos, the World Economic Forum, and will convince us all that Davos is useful. We will also hear from a member behind the badge, Tita von Matuszka, who will speak on her experiences in Rotary and her professional expertise, and we'll hear from two past presidents. Mary Barry will speak on For a Meal and an Opportunity to Volunteer, and past President Reg Smith will update us on his work in establishing the Melbourne Arboretum. Our chair for today is our President-elect, Carol Bond. Would you please join me in acknowledging and making Carol, Dimitrios, Tita, Mary and Reg all welcome. We have visiting Rotarians, visitors and guests. I'll invite you and your host to stand when your name is announced and ask that you please remain standing to enable the club to welcome you in a collective manner. So we've got Doris Shembley, International Visiting Rotarian from Kensington and Chelsea, UK. John Suchich from Waikiki Island, New Zealand. There you are, John. Margaret Hilary Smith from Twickenham upon Thames. I got it right this time. And Australian visiting Rotarians, Francis Harmon from the Australian Rotary Nomads, a very interesting story behind that club, and Joe Kwok from the Rotary Club of Brighton. So if we could all please acknowledge and welcome them. Would past President Mary Barry come to the podium to tell us about the upcoming volunteering opportunity?
Thank you, President Phillip, and good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you all here today. Well, I'm going to talk about our next volunteering opportunity, which is called For a Meal. And I know some of you have participated in past events, and I hope you will do so again. Now, For a Meal was commenced in 2017 by the Rotary Club of Canterbury and is to provide emergency relief meals for those across the Asia Pacific and other regions impacted by disasters. Volunteers from across the Rotary network, schools, universities and other associations produce, seal and box approximately 150,000 meals for distribution the following year. To date, over 3,000 volunteers, including from 36 Rotary clubs, have contributed to the For a Meal cause. Our own past president, Quinn Scalzo, has been providing many of the ingredients for the packs since inception of the programme. Rotary Melbourne first participated in For a Meal in April 2023, forming a partnership with RMIT via board member and now President-elect Carol Bond to run the event at their Swanston Street campus. We have now held 3 events at RMIT, packing over 30,000 meals for distribution overseas. Now that's a lot of meals for this club to have packed. We are now planning our 4th packing event on Wednesday, the 23rd of April, at RMIT, and you will see a flyer on your table advertising same event. Now, I can guarantee you that if you volunteer for this, you will have a fantastic night of hands-on volunteering, great fun, and great fellowship opportunities. We will work in small teams, and we will scoop up the food, and we will scoop it in particular order into the packs. Then the packs will be sealed, then they're put in a box, and then we do that for an hour and a half. And we want to pack at least 10,000 meals. So we have a target and we have a group of people that we really need to come to along to this. Now, these events are not just offering volunteer opportunities for Rotarians. It's also an opportunity for younger people, particularly from the university, to meet Rotarians and to see and understand what we do firsthand. So there's also that engagement with younger people, the opportunity for them to learn more about Rotary. And I would also like to sincerely thank Yidan Z, who is not here today, but Yidan has been coordinating this event for the past few years. She does all the logistics with RMIT and with Canterbury Rotary Club. So without Yidan, it wouldn't happen. So again, if you want to come along for more information, please go to the website to book in. And I guarantee you a night of fun in your funny blue hat and your funny blue gloves. So you'll have a wonderful evening. So please do think about coming along.
Thanks, Mary. And it was still terrific fun last year, even though the elements were against us. I feel I should also just acknowledge Colin Honey, who's been through the wars a bit, at least 3 different battles. Don't stand, Colin. That's no standing. Well done. You're demonstrating. We're not your physio. You don't have to demonstrate your sit to stand, but well done. So good to see you here. Yes. Well, good for you. And as we sort of suggested earlier, don't listen to unreliable news sources, Colin. So the On to Conference was fantastic. I'd like to thank the 2 On to Conference organisers, Deb and Mary. It was a fantastic event. Once I got over my shock of realising we had more people go on our fellowship event for On to Conference than the actual district conference, it was very good. And we saw things that, frankly, in Western Victoria, I wouldn't have seen before, including a misnamed and misnomer, I think, the stick shed, which was a wheat silo with these enormous wooden poles. It looks like a cathedral on the inside, much neglected. So if you see a turn off to see the stick shed, my advice is when you're driving to Adelaide or wherever it is, please go. Even though we talk about it as a district conference, there were actually 3 districts, about 400 people attended. I'm glad we went because Horsham, of course, had been through some tough times with bushfires and other natural disasters. So we helped with a bit of money, but it should be noticed that in the old days, some people might remember those, we might have got 400, 450 to one district by itself. So one of the districts was all of South Australia, then Western Victoria and the Central Melbourne one. We got a Gold Environment Award, which was terrific. And Jennifer Jones did the wrap up. But like a lot of Rotary conferences, we had a lot of demonstrations of the good things that Rotary is doing, as well as some inspirational speakers, and I can't remember the name, but I think it was Smack Talk, which was a gentleman whose son committed suicide after being tricked into sharing one of those nude photos that we all hear, and he's very keen on spreading that message to stop people doing that. That was quite moving. So just one of a number of highlights. And Jennifer Jones spoke again. Are we recording this, Joe? All right. I'll share this anyway. She only used one story that she shared with us at the lunch during the week. So I thought that was pretty good for someone who has to do all of that public speaking. So thank you. I now call on the Chair of the Day, Vice President and President-elect, Carol Bond. Thank you.
Thank you, President Phillip. I would like to ask you all to please welcome past club president Red Smith to speak to us as chair of the Melbourne Arboretum with an update on the progress and emerging opportunities of the Melbourne Arboretum.
Thanks very much, Carol. I suspect many people in this room know that I've been pretty enthusiastic about the burgeoning Melbourne Arboretum for the last 2 or 3 years. And for a while, though, the progress with that venture has really been behind the scenes. But with approval in January this year of the Arboretum's development plan, it's now got approval from the City of Whittlesea to go ahead and start implementing. And this has brought a real sense of urgency to us. At its core, the Arboretum is a 58-hectare native landscape in Melbourne's northern growth corridor. I don't know whether anyone's been out into the northern suburbs of late, but it's really quite frightening, the dense development that's taking place and the rapidity of it. But this is going to be dedicated to Australian trees, natives. It's an ecological restoration, education and community connection project. To give you a sense of its scale, it's about twice the size of the Royal Botanic Gardens of Victoria. So it's a substantial operation. It's a long-term environmental and social asset as well, a place where over 20,000 eucalypts of multiple varieties will form a living forest where Indigenous knowledge is embedded, where diverse communities can connect and with the landscape around them. This is not a conventional park. It's a conservation facility, a learning environment with both education and research being undertaken, and a place for community belonging, okay? And it's already well underway. The two founders, and some of you will recall them, having attended a couple of meetings here, have already invested nearly $2 million of their own hard-earned to get this project up and running. And that's resulted in 3,000 eucalypts already being in the ground. 6 forest zones have already been established. The complete soil rehabilitation of the whole site, which was in a shocking state when they acquired it around 13 years ago, is nearing completion, and a long-term ecological management plan is in place. In short, the trees are growing, the foundation is strong. The Arboretum sits on one of Australia's fastest growing culturally diverse communities where access to meaningful green space is under threat. We know that that access to nature improves well-being, supports social cohesion, and brings a sense of belonging. So while this is an environmental project, it is equally a community and preventative health infrastructure. We're now at a pivotal point. The next phase is really not yet about more trees. It's about enabling infrastructure, things like access roads, things like access to power, water, and some modest visitor facilities. We've got very ambitious plans, which are going to cost a lot of money, but we need fundamentally some usable stuff right now. But without these, the Arboretum can't be accessed. With them, everything changes. They enable public access, education, research, and importantly, they unlock corporate and philanthropic investment. Early infrastructure is the key that unlocks broader support. Alongside this sits a second challenge, and that's our responsibility for long-term stewardship, creating an integrated site-based capability that brings together ecological management, research and community engagement. We've got some conversations starting. There are a couple in the room who know more about this, and there's a huge potential for us to set up a project that's going to inform the maintenance of similar land across Victoria. We're delighted that just last week we had a soft launch generously hosted for us by the Royal Society of Victoria. And the unique part about that was people were meeting a whole lot of people from around town that they'd never met before. And this was a major community cross-section. So it was a great success. We had the Victorian Minister for the Environment, Steve Dimopoulos, joined us, and we're already in follow-up conversations with him about how the state government can assist us, and early partner engagement in a whole range of ways with universities, with private enterprise, with the community has been very encouraging. So Rotary Melbourne has an important role to play. I became chair. I didn't really seek the role. Sue will confirm that. We're on a tour of the Kimberley about 3 years ago and bumped into Maggie and Hamish. And I said, I know someone from Rotary Melbourne who visualised something like this. And I think you'll find there's a lot of interest from Rotarians to get involved. So we've got a role, one bigger than I thought. Last week, we heard past RI President Jennifer Jones' address. We've already discussed that today. But one of her lines really stuck with me, and that was, in order to live in the kind of society you want, you have to help build it. Well, I think the Melbourne Arboretum is in many ways an expression of that principle. So to sum up, the vision is clear, the foundation is definitely in place, and the opportunity is significant. What is now needed is access to open the gate, both literally and figuratively. And I was going to play a short video, but I think I've taken a little longer than I expected. So we'll just load that up onto the website and give you a look at it if you bother to check that out. And thank you, Carol. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to keeping you informed as to what we're up to.
Australia holds some of the most unique ecosystems on Earth. From towering forests to fragile native habitats, our identity has always been tied to the land. Yet despite this awareness, forest destruction is accelerating, and we know it firsthand. This land was left neglected and abandoned, and it mirrors what is happening to our environment everywhere else. And without healthy trees, humanity cannot survive. Along with trees, we lose our deeper connection to the nature that sustain our well-being. We face a nature deficiency that is leaving a societal legacy of isolation and anxiety for generations to come. The Melbourne Arboretum understands this and was born from a dream decades in the making. A vision to reclaim this damaged land and return it to its origins, to restore an authentic Australian landscape right here on the Wurundjeri land. With the capacity to grow more than 20,000 eucalypt and corimbia trees, this is one of the most ambitious conservation efforts in Victoria's history. As the trees return, so does life. Birds, pollinators, community, people of every background finding stillness, wonder, and each other. And we have already started. The land is healing, the trees are growing, the community is gathering. This is not just about Melbourne. This is about the conservation of Australia, for the generations who come after us. We, at the Melbourne Arboretum, are inviting partners to support us in recognising the true value of Australia's natural heritage and making this vision a reality. This environmental initiative cannot wait. The time to act is now.
Thank you so much, Reg. We look forward to hearing about the Melbourne Arboretum at regular intervals. Now, I have the great pleasure to introduce Dr. Patricia van Matuszka. Tita brings an international background in economics and academics with a strong focus on SMEs, or small and medium enterprises, policy, and economic resilience. Tita has recently joined the club and is keen to actively contribute. She's already become involved in several initiatives, including the Young Achievers Awards and club communications. So I'd like to ask Tita to join me to give her a presentation on the member behind the badge.
Thank you, Carol. Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, I just really very recently joined and had my first anniversary, I think, 2 weeks ago. So thank you again to everyone here at Rotary Melbourne for being so welcoming and really becoming my Melbourne family just as much as I was hoping for when I joined the club. Maybe some background on my work here. When I came to Melbourne 3 years ago, I planned on staying for 3 weeks. That didn't work out so well. A joke that is still running in the family, especially my husband, who's still living overseas, does not even, act surprised when I'm canceling yet another return flight. At least this time, the war led to my flight being canceled for me. So this is my excuse for staying until May, because originally I was planning on leaving next week. So with all this background information, you can already hear and see that I'm usually traveling back and forth between Germany and Australia, which led to me being worried about how can I get actively involved in the club. I'm here on research, so I'm conducting research on small and medium-sized enterprise, just as Carol said, and compare how they're influencing and shaping our macroeconomic environment in Europe and Australia, and also with a strong focus on how they have access to finance, digitalization, and especially what are the regional challenges that they are facing, in particular when it comes to rural areas in terms of infrastructure, etc. So obviously, a lot of you have important insights on SMEs or the struggles that businesses face. But on top of that, I also wanted to contribute to the society, and this is best way to be done throughout Rotary Melbourne. So when I first came to the club and wanted to join and get active, the first initiative I joined or participated in was actually For a Meal. I will not speak too much on that because I was only there as a contributor, but For a Meal was a very simple way of getting to know the club. And I really appreciated the chance to have a chat to not only many of you, but also to the students, because the For a Meal that I participated in was held at University Melbourne. And for me as a lecturer and researcher, I really enjoyed to talk to students and get to know their perspective, not from the lecturer side, but from being a person who is just there to help to do something good, to contribute to society. And they were very open, very nice, very welcoming, and gave me insights on what's important for students these days as well, and how we can make them become more active in the classroom. What does interest them? What are the challenges that they are facing? And maybe talk more openly about AI research or the paperwork that they have to do, and how we can get them more involved in the classroom, especially with me doing a lot of online teaching. That's actually something that I am struggling with from time to time. Shortly after that, I was invited to join the initiative of the Young Achievers Award, and I'm very grateful for especially Deb and also other members of the club to reach out to me and ask me to actively join initiatives, because I was always worried that with me flying back and forth, I will not be able to contribute as much as I would really like to, and don't want to be a burden to committees, but actually participate in the work. So I got to know the initiative through online meetings. Luckily, most of them were held online. I've been able to join the Christmas celebrations last year as well. And now I'm very grateful that Joe asked me to be a part of the interview process, which will also be held online. So a big benefit for me again to interview the potential candidates for the Young Achievers Award. That is something that's really humbling, especially when I myself have been supported by different initiatives throughout my university time, to now sit at the other side of the table, not being interviewed, but being the interviewer, and hearing about all the great things that young achievers, as we can name them, are going through the process of becoming supported. And I know firsthand how much of a difference it makes when you get the support you need in order to pay for your tuition or get even support beyond that, like a network or people just to talk to. Lastly, and very recently, I was asked by Sue Smith to join the Bulletin team to be a part of the club communication. Another great chance for me to get involved, even though I'm traveling a lot, because this can be done online. So I'm very grateful for digitalization. I have been introduced to the online tools, and actually the Bulletin has been really helpful for me personally to stay on top of all the topics while I was overseas. So see what's going on in the club, what are the upcoming events, what is going to happen while I'm being back in Melbourne. So Rotary Melbourne has been very on top of all of these things and made it really easy for me to stay active and involved, even though I'm not in the country. And this is something that I am really looking forward to continuing when I'm sending out the bulletin. Not yet. I have just yesterday, not even published, but created my first article in the online networks, who had a first look at it, and she was not completely disappointed, I hope. No, the feedback was pretty positive. There's hope. So I'm really looking forward to creating the bulletin myself, get that work of Sue, and also then being able to get an active member, become an active member and have an active role here at Rotary Melbourne and contributing to the everyday work of our club. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tita. And it's wonderful when we are all able to make our newer members feel welcome and give them purposeful, meaningful roles to help them feel connected to the club and the community at large. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our third speaker, Dr. Dimitrios Salampasis, and he will talk about Davos 2026. Dr. Dimitrios is an associate professor in emerging technologies and fintech at Swinburne University of Technology and fintech capability lead with extensive global experience across academia, industry, and policy. Born in Athens and educated across Europe, US, and Australia, he has worked across private and public sectors, international organizations, and advisory roles focused on technology management, technology policy, strategic innovation, and geopolitical analysis. He is a visiting professor in Canada, Switzerland, and Bahrain, a fintech and blockchain fellow at the Singapore University of Social Sciences, an industry fellow at the Global FinTech Institute, and expert contributor to the Diplomatic Courier. He also contributes as an expert to the World Economic Forum's Quantum Economy Network expert, and he serves as a non-executive chair for quantum computing within the Digital Economist, together with holding a number of international research and advisory fellowships. He's been a very busy man. Dr. Dimitrios is an award-winning educator and thought leader recognized for excellence in fintech innovation and blockchain education, and is an active member of leading professional bodies, including the Australian Institute of Company Directors and Singapore Institute of Directors. Dimitrios joined our club in September 2024 with the classification Innovation FinTech and is a member of the Kew North Baldwin Rotary Group. Welcome.
Great. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you. Probably a bit unnecessary, but thank you so much for the invitation to join today. And President Philip has mandated me to convince you why Davos is interesting and important. So it's my second time in the World Economic Forum, and basically, as for the ones who don't know, the World Economic Forum is one of the biggest international global think tanks. They do a lot of work, and their highlight event is the annual meeting that takes place in a very small village of Davos in Switzerland. It takes place in January. They've got multiple events running around during the entire week. And basically, it has two tiers. The tier where, it's the main auditorium with the politicians, with the presidents, the head of states, and all that. And then there is another whole ecosystem of companies that run multiple events, multiple conferences, and multiple, international gatherings. So I am part of the second tier because you don't have access to, the big auditorium unless you are invited by a state or the likes. But also to be part of that, you have to be invited as well. So you don't just show up. And it's been a great privilege for me to be there. Unfortunately, I must say Australia's presence has been quite limited. This year, I only encountered 3 other people from different facets of the Australian society, economy, business being there. So there was no official Australian delegation, which can be interpreted in multiple ways. In terms of the topics itself, there is a list of questions that the forum puts every year. And definitely, I think there was a big discussion around how do you actually recreate trust. There's a trust erosion happening in our societies. And also, how do you actually ensure organizations evolve to adapt to all these highly complex sets of dynamics? And of course, geopolitical questions were really, really at the top of the agenda. Another big topic was in relation to the new sources of growth. Global growth is projected to have only 3.1% for 2026, and that goes into the increased cost of living, inflation, and basically questions around how economies can harness innovation for long-term productivity. Definitely, the people part would play a very critical role, especially when it comes to reskilling and upskilling to achieving resilience workforce, especially in times of digitalization and AI. And how do you actually ensure job growth opportunities in the emerging economies? Another key interesting topic was in relation to AI itself, and basically how does it actually reshape industries? And I'm sure you're all across the news of what's happening with artificial intelligence and different forms of artificial intelligence, starting from AI, generative AI, agentic AI, impact on productivity, impact on workforce, on job creation or job losses, and so on. And how can you actually utilize emerging technologies for growth and boosting also the economy? And of course, questions around responsible deployment, ethical and responsible utilization, all these kind of things played a very critical role. And finally, I think the climate and prosperity in relation to the planetary boundaries played a very critical role. We're looking at nature loss impacts of 75% of the Earth's land and poses a significant economic risk. So basically looking into new business models and how can you actually transit towards nature positive business models that could potentially unlock approximately $10 trillion annually by 2030. Now, within this week, I was there with a number of hats and a number of affiliations. Definitely, as an academic of Swinburne University, that was my main, let's say, hat, but I wore other hats in relation to my other affiliations and engagements. And that is also an interesting learning because it allows you also to have a global mindset. It allows you to talk to different types of audiences, and it allows you also to craft different kinds of messaging in relation to whom you're talking to and in relation to which kind of events you are participating. And I was very fortunate enough to participate in a number of events. This is not a marketing or branding exercise. This is more around to show you the magnitude of different topics that as an academic, you can be involved, as a thought leader, you can be engaged with, and also the different types of audiences you need to bring forward and craft and curate this particular messaging. So I think one of the key elements was, of course, in relation to the fintech work that I'm doing in the emerging tech world, especially when it comes to ownership, trust, and value exchange of financial services. That was during the first day. That was a panel event, and on that particular panel as well was very interesting because I actually launched my new book, which was a big thing in terms of talking about all these different aspects of financial innovation and also looking into where things are heading and how do you actually create value through financial innovation and fintech. So that was a very moving moment to see, people talking to you and reaching out to listen about your research and talk about all the things that we are doing. This is actually an edited book together with a colleague of mine from Switzerland. We worked together with 25 global thought leaders and we curated different types of research in the context of financial technologies. Another interesting topic was in relation to AI, and it actually fits into a very bigger conversation of data sovereignty and AI sovereignty in terms of empowering people, in terms of protecting assets, and also in terms of making sure that it's not about control, but it's about accountability. So it's not about isolating economies. And I think in Australia, we're very deep into thinking about sovereignty across different spectrums. And I'm actually curating now an interesting research in relation to these topics around AI sovereignty, data sovereignty, and also looking across how do you actually ensure that there is no dependency from other types of jurisdictions. So basically, how do you preserve interoperability and global collaboration? I think that was the core question, which goes back into data governance, which goes back into enforceability of ethics and alignment of AI with societal values. And I think this societal lens is also, and the human rights lens is also very interesting for us from a Rotary point of view, that goes also into the issues of protection of humanity, protection of values, protection of this community driven approach, which is very, very interesting as well. And also at the end of the day, all of these should be people centered, and also they need to be also in a protection of our environment as well. Another interesting one was about, again, in the lens of prosperity, especially in artificial intelligence. So that was more around how do you actually link prosperity and technology? How do you bring together technological advancements to stay away from inequality, to factor geopolitical tensions, and also how do you bring forward social trust? And I think these kind of questions are really, really fundamental, especially when it comes to deploying all these emerging technologies, in particular in the world of AI, basically also looking at the benefits for small businesses, for the society, for, jurisdictions and all that. So I think that the point here is really around looking into innovation and growth, workforce transformation, ethical AI, and sustainability. And the governance aspect was also very, very important. It was a big topic across all the discussions and the events that I participated. One which was actually fantastically interesting, and also I think it really sits with our work, was about authenticity. How do you actually use technology for ethics and making sure that you bring the human rights lens? And there was a very interesting session here in relation to families reunification and how do you use technology to craft stories, to craft identities, and also how do you bring this ethical stewardship in innovation. And I think that was really, really interesting, and that kind of ethical storytelling, that it was framed to restore this human connection, safeguard dignity, and also inform systems that within failing vulnerable communities. So I think all these things create a very interesting discourse around the new areas of innovation, especially when it comes to trauma-informed innovation, equity, and cultural memory. So these are very, I would say, niche areas of research and also understanding, and also because of the wars in general that we have seen in the past, the notion of intergenerational healing was a very big topic as well that it was discussed in this particular session. Now, going back to my mandate to try to convince you about Davos, I think what is also interesting there is that you don't even know who you're going to meet. You don't even know who you're going to jump to. And I met actually very interesting people, but one of the persons that really I wasn't planning to meet, but I actually met was John Martini. He is the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physics laureate. He's a professor at the University of California, and he was so happy to have a talk, even though there was a line of people wanting to talk to him and take photos. But I think what is really interesting in this kind of gatherings is that people are approachable, people are reachable. People are willing to share, and basically having this kind of openness and this kind of attitude, I think it fits very well with the world that we live in terms of connectivity, in terms of sharing. And people are also very curious to learn about our work, to learn about our, ideas. I know I'm running probably a bit out of time, so I'm just gonna flip through some other events that I attended. Again, AI played a very critical role. That was an event by the Economist focusing on the boards and how boards of organizations are harnessing the powerful nature of AI, and also for scaling beyond the technicalities. Other events that I attended, as you can see, there is a mix from the insights, the Financial Times. One interesting event run by the Federal Department of the Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, the World Economic Forum, happened during President Trump's presentation. So we watched the presentation from a room which was actually nearby, and then we had a big discussion around what does this all mean. So I think President Trump's representation came at a very critical moment, I would say, and everybody was waiting for that on that Wednesday. So that was quite interesting to see also how you actually see politics playing a very critical role. But as I mentioned earlier, the geopolitical lens was very critical. So I think, what do I learn? What are the key learning outcomes that I bring back to my work, my research, and all that? Definitely bringing innovation at the higher levels and having this kind of conversations is very important. Thinking about AI as an infrastructure and how does it fit with the overall discourse of emerging technologies. I think the economic resilience is very important, especially in these weird times that we all live in. Climate is a very important aspect, especially when it comes to finding new forms of finance to be able to utilize all these new business models. And I think also inequality, unfortunately, plays a very big part in our today's risk assessments, inequality across different spectrums. The geopolitical aspect was very well discussed, especially when it comes to the geometry that all of this present right now. Job insecurity, job creation, but at the same time, job loss, and especially jobs being lost because of AI. That's a very important topic as well. the energy, and I think we're seeing that a lot when it comes to the energy crisis that we all live in, but also the world trade. I think that's also been very, very critical as a key topic. And finally, I think from my point of view, what actually makes it very important, and again, I'm going back to President Philip's mandate to try to convince you, is that being there gives you credibility. Being there allows you to show your thought leadership, allows you to express yourself, allows you to be part of global communities, allows you to meet people that you probably have never met. And also, this strategic networking is very important because you bring it back to your own jurisdictions. You meet people from all over the world, from different types of business, societal organizations, NGOs, politicians, and so on. So that relationship building is very, very important because you're also able to craft key messages and communication. So I think that diversity is very important. And I think also being part of an organization such as Rotary, it's also important to be able to adapt your insights to a global context. So I think this globality is very important. Definitely, the World Economic Forum has been associated with many different messages and very diverse messages, but I think it's interesting to see that the impact that we can bring and also the younger generation can bring, it's very important. So hopefully, I will continue working towards that direction. As it was mentioned, I'm part of the World Economic Forum's Quantum Economy Network, which is relevant to my research, but that brings different bridges and different connections as well. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Demetrius. This was absolutely fascinating. I've always kind of wanted to know what happens in Davos in the various different corridors and meeting rooms. And this has provided a really wonderful overview of how ordinary people, mere mortals, can participate in this forum as well. We do have a few minutes for questions, and we do have our MC running around with a mic, I hope. So please wait for the mic to come to you before you speak so we can all hear your question, and we look forward to your answer.
Thank you.
Demetrius, thanks. That was very interesting. I noticed you did mention AI and the conversation about it. What's the net job impact of AI likely to be? Was that discussed? I'm sure it probably was.
It was discussed. I cannot give you exact numbers. I think one of the biggest challenges is not about the jobs that will be lost. It's the fact that many organizations are using AI as some sort of a cheap excuse to make people redundant. That's the first thing. Another thing it's very important to remember is that many organizations unfortunately use human employees to train AI models, and then the moment they don't need them anymore, they make them redundant. We've seen cases with big banks here that they did that and then they had to rehire them again because the AI models wasn't strong enough. I think we're getting into a situation where there's going to be new jobs created, but unfortunately, the main discourse goes into that there's going to be many jobs that will be lost. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? I can't comment because I think everyone currently sits in the lines of relevance. Even we as higher education or as academics, we're going through a massive extinction, I would say. We're looking into an existential crisis at the moment. So is AI going to be solving all these kind of issues? My answer is no. I think we're going into a point of coexistence, but it has to be done in a responsible way, and it has to be done with guardrails. You can't just simply, train models with structured or unstructured data without guardrails or without any ethical or responsible deployment. So I think this is I think the big question at the moment that nobody actually has cracked it down yet.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thanks for the presentation, Demetrius.
Thank you.
I'd be really interested to understand what your room made of President Donald Trump's comments to the forum.
Look, if I can talk, let's say, in a non-political element or attitude, President Trump has his own way of doing things. He has his own way of expressing himself. He has his own way of understanding the world and understanding the alliances that he thinks he has and the people that he wants around him. The attitude that he proclaimed is that nations need him more than he needs them. And I think one of the key one of the key aspects of his presentation in the room that I was is that even the way he talks can be insulting, can be, very brutal. Another element that it was mentioned is that probably he talks a lot, but without really knowing what he's talking about. And also the fact that he thinks he has a specific worldview of how things should be happening, but that doesn't mean that's the truth. It was also interesting that during his presentation, majority of not like country leaders or prime ministers were not in the room, except maybe for a couple of exemptions. So this I think leads to multiple messages, but I must say that day everybody was waiting to see what the topic of the discussion was, and even if you actually watch this presentation, you saw many conflicting messages and conflicting views. For me, the highlight was the speech of the Canadian Prime Minister and the way he actually talked and the way he articulated the key messages in such a way, and he presented, I would say, quite of a dark way of how where our world is heading. But again, these are all geopolitical issues. But unfortunately, I think we are heading towards more of a dystopian society and a dystopian world, and we should probably be very worried about that. And if I can make a comment, what's happening right now, it's simply crazy, and it's simply, there is no reason why this should be happening in the 21st century, 2026. Yeah.
Demetrius, thank you for your presentation. David Hayes. Traditionally, we've looked at the developing world as a source of employment and used that for cheaper production, for sharing resources in that fashion. With the influx of AI and the technology advances, how do you see the role of the developing world, India, Cambodia, Estonia, who have great technological advances? How do you see that?
To be honest with you,
the sharing of employment?
To be honest with you, there has been some research and some people talking with the fact that it's probably safer to be currently in countries which are not very developed when it comes to technologies, because there you probably have more guardrails of losing your job or being in risk of being made redundant because of artificial intelligence. I don't really buy this kind of approach. I believe especially that we are heading towards a world where there's going to be a coexistence between machines and humans, and we need a new social contract for that. I think also the underdeveloped countries are also picking up on that quite a lot, and there's a lot of investment happening towards upskilling and also creating new infrastructure. So I definitely, the geopolitical side, and you mentioned particularly India, but India for me is now the biggest economy when it comes to technology itself. It's not the US, it's not Europe. So the pieces of the puzzle are changing a lot, and definitely we're going to be seeing a lot more moving pieces happening, especially when it comes to not who's going to be the one to be the first. We're not looking into AI supremacy, but we're looking into AI advantage. And I think India is probably the greatest example to that respect. Europe has other issues, especially when it comes to being I would say a supranational entity that has multiple languages and multiple things to sort out, but definitely they're also leading a couple of areas. But India is definitely the place to look at, in my humble opinion.
Thank you very much, Demetrius, and for your efforts. We would like to present you with the 200% Australian socks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Produced by Phil Endersby and
you.
Company. And Peter and Reg, I have socks for you as well, which I'll distribute at the end of the meeting. Thank you. All right. I want to thank our guest speakers, all for sharing of their experiences, and I look forward to hearing from them again at the appropriate intervals, and definitely sharing lunch with you in future meetings. I'd also like to thank our guests from overseas for attending, and we do have some banners here that you can exchange with President Philip at the close of the meeting and take the appropriate photos. I'd also like to thank our MC Peter Davis and Barbara Urandes for today's reflection, and as always, our setup and reception team for their efforts. And if you are able to stay back to help them kind of unpack the room, or pack up the room, that would be fantastic. Now, a reminder, next week there is no lunch meeting, as we have an evening meeting scheduled at the Paris Cat Jazz Club on Thursday, the 9th of April. And it's a tribute to West Montgomery. So any of you jazz fans who like West Montgomery, this will be a not to be missed opportunity, but you do have to book directly to the club, and there's details on our newsletter. So the next lunch meeting is back here at number 35 on April 15th with guest speaker Charlie Thomas, CEO of Victorian Farmers Federation, which will be terrific timing given the fuel crisis and its impact. And finally, for those observing Passover this evening and Easter later this week, we wish you every blessing for your celebrations.